Good morning and happy Tuesday to all our wonderful listeners. You're listening to WZNC, LP Bethlehem, North Country Community Radio, 99.9 FM, and streaming online at nococommunityradio.org. I'm Amanda McKeen, and this is North of Normal. We're in Season 2, and this is Episode 2. And whether you've been listening since the beginning or you're just finding us today, I'm so glad you're here. I started this show because I kept meeting people around the North Country and the White Mountains whose stories deserved more than a quick introduction. They deserved more than a job title or a bio found online. This show is my excuse to slow down, get curious, and have real conversations with people connected to this region. A few things you should know. North of Normal is by invite only. Guests don't book themselves. They don't fill out an application. This isn't a place for sales pitches, politics, religion, or even charitable causes. And not because those things don't matter, but because this hour is built for something different. It's built for honest conversation, local stories, and the reminder that people are almost always more interesting than the boxes that we put them in. I'm so glad you're spending part of your Tuesday with us today. My guest is Dr. Peter Crane from the Mount Washington Observatory. Hi, Peter.
Hello, Amanda. Thank you for inviting me today.
Oh, I'm just so happy that I get the chance to meet you in person. Normally, I meet my guests beforehand. We will have coffee, and we did try to do that. Mm-hmm. But around that time, I was struggling with my health, and the drive over to Conway just felt a little bit too impossible. So we had a phone call instead.
Yes, I think that worked out just fine.
I do too.
So I'm glad you're feeling better, and
thank you.
Thank you for inviting me and having a chance to connect with your listeners.
Absolutely, and I think we have a lot of new listeners today because you have quite a fan base, Peter. I wanted to pull up a couple of the comments. I know you're not like super active on Facebook, but one of the things I love about this show is that when I announce my guests, I get to see how people relate to them. Mm-hmm. And one of the comments left said, it was from someone named Jim. Jim says, he's a wealth of information. Quite a few years ago, he led one of the winter education trips up Mount Washington that I was on, back when the trips were $300. Several people said that they weren't going to miss this episode. And let me see.
It's an honor and a privilege.
It's an honor to have you here. Some people are just celebrating. They say hi. Someone referred to you as the Cranium. Is that a nickname you're familiar with?
Yes, it is. Actually, I think I was first given that nickname back in 1978.
Oh, wow.
When I worked at the Lakes of the Clouds hut for the Appalachian Mountain Club. And it was a great summer working with a great crew. And I guess I displayed a penchant for various pieces of detailed information. Yeah. Such that one of my coworkers played on that with my name. Yeah. And started calling me the Cranium. And fortunately, that only surfaces on rare occasions these days.
Well, now it's on radio for everybody to hear. Okay, so there's so many different avenues we could take during this hour. Mm-hmm. But the whole point of my show is really to celebrate the human being behind whatever role we're introduced as. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm sure a lot of people listening want to hear about Mount Washington, and I'm sure that will come up. Mm-hmm. But what I'd really like to understand, Peter, is how did you end up where you are now. And I'd like to start at the beginning, if that's okay.
Yeah, I can go back at least to high school.
Okay.
And one of my teachers was interested in the outdoors, as were several of my fellow students. And we had a camping club. And we would come up here from the Boston suburbs. And yes, I grew up in Boston, which makes me one of those mass, as some people might call it. But we all have to come from somewhere.
That's true.
And so I started coming up hiking and camping. My first visit to Mount Washington was on Friday the 13th of June, 1969.
Wow.
My brother was a skier, and he was skiing in Tuckerman Ravine.
Yeah.
And I have this sneaking suspicion that maybe my mother made it worth my brother's while to take his kid brother up Mount Washington. So we camped out in Tuckerman Ravine, climbed up through Wright Gully, which, looking back at it, was pretty adventurous at the time. That was my first trip up Mount Washington.
And that was in June.
June, yes.
I mean, if your brother was skiing, there was clearly snow there.
Yes, yes. And on that occasion, made just slight acquaintance of some of the Forest Service snow rangers, who I would come to know much better in future years. One of the little ironies is that one of my responsibilities now is overseeing the old logbooks, which include crew logs and visitor logs from the observatory. And going back to that day, my brother signed in.
He did?
But I didn't.
Oh.
So
there's no record of you?
No, but I know what happened. And I have a few old Kodak Instamatic pictures of the summit back then on that June day.
Wow.
And so I just kept coming up. It got in my blood.
Yeah.
My first trip up the mountain, up Mount Washington, was very slow. I wouldn't say it was agonizing, but it was certainly not entirely pleasurable. So I worked hard to get into better shape. A month later, my brother and I went up into Carter Notch and over the Wildcat Mountains, which is a pretty tough hike.
Did you go up the ridge?
We did. We went up the ridge from Carter Notch and then back down into Pinkham Notch.
Okay.
And that actually, I'd say the trail coming up from Carter Notch was even steeper back then.
Oh. And
then hiked up and stayed another night at Tuckerman Ravine before ending our trip. And I was in much better shape by then, which is fortunate.
Yeah.
Something that you can do when you're a teenager, is get into better shape quickly. And it just got in my blood, so I just kept on coming. I was active in my college outing club, and eventually started working up here. And so I just keep on hiking year-round, cross-country skiing, never really a downhill skier, but enjoy being in the outdoors.
Yeah. So you just skipped over a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes.
So high school, you started familiarizing yourself with this place.
Yes.
And it was because of your older brother.
Yes.
And because of your mother who allowed it to happen.
Yes.
Did your mother, had she been up here before?
I'd say I think she had probably visited as a tourist once upon a time.
Okay.
When she was a kid, she and her family went out to some of the national parks.
Yeah.
But she was not particularly an outdoors person beyond the roses that she was growing in her garden.
Oh.
Yeah.
Roses sound nice.
Yes.
They sound safe.
Yes.
So what is it that what was your household like?
Let's see. There were 5 kids.
Wow.
And we lived in the Boston suburbs.
Yeah.
It was perhaps a typical suburban community at the time, playing kickball at night out on the street in front of the houses, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Waiting for the jingle of the ice cream truck to come down the street. Walked to school. So I guess maybe a typical suburban life of the late 50s, early 60s.
Okay. And then once high school was over, you mentioned college.
Yes.
What did you go to college for?
I eventually majored in folklore and mythology, which is an unusual major.
Yeah.
It's really kind of a combination of anthropology and comparative literature. And at that time, I focused mostly on Irish material, hearkening back to my ancestry. My father's parents and my mother's grandparents came over from Ireland back in the late 1800s. And I've been fortunate to spend a little bit of time in Ireland, including in some of the real country regions. Though when I went to graduate school, I shifted my focus more toward what's now my local area, and I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the town of Livermore, New Hampshire.
Okay.
Which was a logging town that existed, the south end of Crawford Notch. It existed from roughly 1875 to 1935. At one time, probably up to 200 people were supported by that town. It was a logging town.
Yeah.
There was a lumber mill. There were logging camps out in the woods. But eventually, for a variety of reasons, it petered out, and now, except for a very small parcel that remains privately owned, it's all national forest land.
Gotcha.
Folks who climb Mount Carrigan typically will go by. It's almost like walking down the main street of Livermore, but there's not much to see there now.
Wow. Yeah. And what was your relation to that place?
I happened to live nearby.
Okay.
And at one point, when I was trying to come up with a dissertation topic, I spoke with the historical archaeologist who worked for the White Mountain National Forest. And he suggested a number of possible topics that he had an interest in and thought would be worth pursuing.
Yeah.
And one of them was Livermore. And I said, well, of course. At that time, I lived in Bartlett Village.
Okay.
Just a couple miles away.
Yeah.
And also at that time, there were still some people alive. This was back in around 1990. Still some people who had lived there back in the 1920s and very early 1930s. So I had a chance to meet with some of them and to learn from their personal experiences what life had been like there back then.
That's a privilege.
Yeah, it certainly was.
Yeah.
It certainly was.
So what do you think influenced your attraction to understanding people and places?
Well, I guess just being a human being.
Yeah.
And trying to, and just observing what goes on and trying to understand motivations, actions, and so forth. In some respects, a historian, and sometimes when we look at history, we might have some of the facts, if we can call them that, but not all of them. Mm-hmm. And often we don't know people's motivations. We don't know those people who perhaps write down their motivation, if that's entirely accurate.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Either a lack of self-awareness or a desire to spin things.
Right.
And so I think just kind of mapping our human experiences onto what has happened in the past to try to better understand what's going on and what might go on in the future.
I'm thinking back to the college-age version of you and wanting to understand what makes somebody that early in life want to pursue that. Because I think about myself when I was that young age and how I had no idea who I even was, let alone wanting to understand the world around me.
Well, I can't say I had a great idea of what I wanted. And if I had to do it again, given the experience I've acquired since then, I probably would do it differently.
Really?
But of course, you can't change things that happened decades ago.
Yeah.
So you just move along and realize that, if the opportunity arises, maybe we can change directions here and there. there are people who reinvent themselves, and sometimes very successfully, and sometimes very happily. So I think that can be a great thing to keep in mind.
What things would you do differently?
I don't know. I might tend more toward, and more explicitly toward history.
Okay.
And I suppose there's a possibility, since I work for a scientific organization, I might consider something in the realm of science, although I'll have a confession to make.
Oh, boy.
I never was really good at math. And calculus was my great roadblock in high school.
Okay.
So I think I might not be so quantitatively inclined. Things like the humanities, history, social sciences, languages.
Language.
I did okay in science, wasn't always my forte. So working for the observatory now, I'm more on the historical side of things.
Yeah.
Because that also is connected to the human experience on Mount Washington, and how science is a very important part of that.
Yes. So let's talk about how you ended up working for the observatory. Sure. How did that all play out?
I'd say it probably started with my work for the Appalachian Mountain Club. I worked for the AMC for 10 years, from 1978 to 1988, typically in backcountry positions. I worked in one capacity or another at most of the huts, at Crawford Notch, at Pinkham Notch, Tuckerman Ravine. So I got a fair amount of experience there. That was a wonderful opportunity. And I figured it was time to try something different. So the summer of '88, I worked for the U.S. Forest Service. I was doing trail work based out of the Saco district. And toward the end of that stint, I heard that there was a job opening at the observatory. And they wanted someone to be a weather observer, but also to oversee the observatory seasonal museum on top of the mountain. And I had, I guess I'll say, somewhat similar experience working at the AMC at Pinkham Notch, overseeing the front desk, public contact, retail sales, educational activities, and so forth. So I applied for that position and was fortunate to receive it. So I worked there at the summit a little bit of off and on for 3 years. Then was involved in educational activities, and now, gosh, it's about 15, 16 years ago, segued to being the curator of the observatory's historical collection. And as I was mulling this over this morning, thinking, you might ask, well, how did the observatory come up with a historical library and an archive? And in terms of the odd twists of fate, I can attribute it to Pearl Harbor Day.
Really?
Yes. Sounds bizarre, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, the observatory was established in 1932. And during the early years, the observatory would welcome visitors in for a quick tour of the observatory. There weren't all that many people up there on top of the mountain, and there was enough flexibility in the schedule of the observers to allow that. But after the attack on Pearl Harbor, weather became very sensitive information.
Oh.
There was the concern, for instance, that if there was a U-boat lurking off the coast, listening into the radio signals about weather, they might decide to attack a coastal city some night when the weather cooperated. So, the observatory can no longer let people in for tours. But the observers appreciated the opportunity to share news of the work they were doing. So they set up a little display room in the observatory where they could let people in, but still maintain the confidentiality of the current weather information. So that little display room eventually, about 1970 or so, became the Mount Washington Museum. And part of the the needs for the museum was to have resources for research, to develop new exhibits and develop educational programs. And so the observatory started building up a library, also included the archive of past work at the observatory and so forth. And it just grew. So now we have, I think, probably about 4,500 books in the research library. We have archival materials, including older weather records and records from some of the earlier participants in the observatory. We have maps, guidebooks, photographs, quite a bit of material that's available for public use. Our library is part of the state interlibrary loan system, so that thus far, I think, patrons from probably 70 different libraries across the state have borrowed books from our library.
Okay.
So it's great to have that available for them. And it provides a source of information, resources for people, whether they're doing genealogical research or scientific research of some sort, or just have an interest in finding out more about Mount Washington and the White Mountains. And sometimes we'll get other donations of material. For instance, a couple of years ago, the family of one man who had been very, very active in the U.S. Army and had a position of great authority there, they donated some of his personal papers, books, letters, and so forth. And this was material that he had accumulated going back to the 1930s. He had worked for a while for the Appalachian Mountain Club. And I just found it very touching that someone who had a position of such authority in the U.S. Army, with very important work to do, still held on to these items that reminded him of his early days in the White Mountains.
Yeah.
So those formative experiences can be very important ones.
It must have felt pretty special to receive those things.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago, I was contacted by a man whose father had worked on Mount Washington in the mid-1940s. He hadn't worked at the observatory yet. He actually was doing work for the B.F. Goodrich Company, and he was testing various pieces of equipment to help prevent aircraft icing.
Oh.
Because when you have atmospheric icing forming in an airplane, that can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
And this gentleman shared with us, and now I'm in the process of copying a few hundred negatives taken on Mount Washington in the mid-1940s. Some of them scenic, some of them related directly to his research work.
Yeah.
But again, that's a little piece of Mount Washington's history that, thanks to the thoughtfulness of this man, we're able to add to our collection and to make available for others.
That is so cool.
Yes.
It's like you get to peer into history.
Yes.
And then share it with the world.
Yes.
You know?
For sure.
It's like you're the bridge between those two things.
I'll confess one of my recent disappointments.
Oh, no.
Every once in a while, knowing let's call it the power of the internet, I'll Google something or someone, just wondering if anything else about an event or a person has made its way online. And a couple of months ago, I Googled Winfield Scott Jewell. And for those who don't know, Winfield Scott Jewell was from Lisbon, New Hampshire. He worked on Mount Washington as a member of the U.S. Army Signal Service back around 1878, 1879. He later gave his life on an Arctic expedition in 1884 on Ellesmere Island, which is up near Greenland. And he was a member of the Lady Franklin Bay expedition, often referred to as the ill-fated Lady Franklin Bay expedition. I believe there were 25 members to start that voyage. And 2 years later, only 6 of them returned to the United States. Most had died from exposure starvation, disease, and Jewel was one who died.
Oh.
And in his memory, the Jewel Trail on Mount Washington was named for him. And getting to the disappointment, I found an auction record from 2 years ago of some papers of Winfield Scott Jewel that had been sold at auction.
Yeah.
And I took a look through. Most of them were polar, so not directly related to the observatory's collection. But there were about a dozen pages of Jewel's journal from Mount Washington.
Really?
And I said, holy cow, this is remarkable. We have an opportunity here to learn more from the first-person perspective of what life on the mountain was like for a soldier who is exposing himself to severe conditions, to learn more about the mountain and its weather. And I got in touch with the auction company, and I said, I know that the buyer probably wants to remain confidential, but if you can pass a message on, a heartfelt message from Mount Washington, to see if we can somehow get a copy of that material. And sad to say, the auction company said, we do not service intermediaries. So, very disappointed. Somewhere out there are a dozen pages, at this point lost to Mount Washington history, that would give us a little glimpse into life there more than 100 years ago.
Well, I have a feeling that this conversation is going to help keep that quest alive.
Well, I'll hope so.
Yes.
I'll hope so.
I want to ask you about your AMC time.
Yes.
Because I've had quite a few people on so far who have also been up there.
Yes.
And you probably know of Roger Damon and Dan Brodeen.
Yeah, and Neil Brodeen.
And Neil and all of the guys that were Joel White.
Joel, for sure. He was my boss at one point.
So I would love to hear more about your personal experience of being up there, especially in moments of like crisis. And, you know, where were you in those moments and what did you witness and all of that stuff, the fun stuff?
Well, I had the pleasure of working for the AMC for 10 years, mostly in the huts. And it's great to be able to work at a remote area where you can wake up and look outside and there aren't any vehicles there. It does require a certain amount of self-confidence to be able to work in or even run one of those backcountry facilities because you are away from the immediate supervision of huts management. Certainly young people, and I'd say most of the people who work in the huts are probably in the early 20s. It's a really formative experience for them because you're given a lot of responsibility and you're also given a lot of trust. I remember one huts manager who used to say, you know, if you treat people like kids, they'll act like kids. If you treat people like an adult, they'll act like an adult. And, you know, I think by and large folks are always rising to that occasion. And as you noted, sometimes there are real emergencies, search and rescue emergencies that occur. Sometimes they're relatively straightforward, where you have someone perhaps with a lower extremity injury, which perhaps might be the most common backcountry injury. But still, these are folks whose family and friends and, of course, themselves are very concerned about what will happen next. And it's good that in New Hampshire we have, I would say, a very good search and rescue system, including, of course, and overseen for the most part by the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. In the winter and spring over on Mount Washington, the U.S. Forest Service is deeply involved. But there are also local fire departments, rescue departments of various types, and probably about 6 or 7 volunteer teams that are really an integral part of our whole search and rescue system. And I know one of the fish and game officials Sometimes he hesitates to call them volunteers. He'd rather call them unpaid professionals.
Oh, that's nice.
Which is a compliment.
Yes.
Recognizing that they take their job very seriously.
Yeah.
And from time to time, there are even more serious incidents that occur at or near some of the huts. And it's important for the crews to attend to those as quickly as possible, as well as they can. And again, typically they will rise to the occasion and do the best they can in the circumstances. There are times, I would say most times, there are happy endings. Sometimes there aren't. And that is a situation where they just have to do the best they can with what they have.
What situation comes to mind when you think about that and you?
There was an occasion up on Mount Madison many years ago where a father and son and friend hiked up the mountain. Weather was very poor, rainy, cold, windy. The son and family friends survived. The father did not. And, of course, you always want to have happy endings, but sometimes circumstances don't allow that.
Were you at the Madison Hut at the time?
I wasn't. I was down at Pinkham Notch at the time.
Because I read that in one of the books out there.
And Nick Howe's Not Without Peril.
Yes, Not Without Peril.
Yes.
I really remember that story very vividly for some reason.
Yes.
But so you were down at Pinkham.
Yes, yeah.
Were you like hearing everything on the radio?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So when we think about incidents like that, we prefer to think of the happy endings.
Yeah.
There was one that came to mind the other day. There was a accident up in Huntington Ravine on Mount Washington.
Yes.
Which has what I think most folks would consider in sections the most difficult trail in the White Mountains, the Huntington Ravine Trail. When you're up on the head wall, there definitely are some places where you're doing rock climbing and where slip could have very serious consequences. Mm-hmm. The other day, there was someone who fell, I think the report said 50 feet, had serious injuries, and they were flown out by an Army National Guard helicopter, which in that location definitely required some very skillful flying. Mm. Quite a few years ago, I think it was, I forget exactly how many, but I was involved in a rescue there also. A woman was hiking up, fell, suffered some serious injuries, and the Mountain Rescue Service really came to the fore. And I was there with one of the state park rangers, since I was relatively close by.
Okay.
And gave some immediate assistance, but it really required the expertise and the technical ability of the Mountain Rescue Service to safely bring that woman up to the Alpine Garden,
yes, where
a Boston medical helicopter came and picked her up and brought her to Boston.
Yep.
And from what I understand, she subsequently had a full recovery. So we like those happy endings a lot more.
Yeah, we do. What did that feel like for you to be involved like that at the beginning and hear that she was going to be okay?
It's always a relief when helicopters are involved, and they are not always, contrary to what some people might think or see on TV, to see that helicopter flying away.
Yeah.
Because you know that now you've done all that you can. The patient is in good hands and is on the way to definitive assistance. I recall one Forest Service snow ranger, Brad Ray, may he rest in peace, who once said, sometimes the best thing we can do for these people is to get them the heck off the mountain.
Yeah.
And there is some truth to that.
Yeah.
I think in the emergency medical community, there are discussions sometimes back and forth between hurrying up and getting the person to an advanced facility versus doing what you can on the scene.
Right.
And the best Treatment is going to vary case by case, time by time. But I think we all know that we don't have the tools and typically don't have the expertise in the backcountry that you would have at a hospital.
Right.
So we want the best for these patients and definitely want them to get to safety as soon as possible. Besides the fact that being out where often is cold, wet, and windy is not so good either.
I'm curious if you've ever found yourself in a situation where you were needing help out there.
Fortunately, no. Is there some wood here that I can knock on?
I can't find any right now.
Yes. I would like to think that, I'd like to think that at this point in my life, some of it is skill. But some of it also is avoidance.
Yeah.
When I think of various pieces of information I might give to someone, one is pick your days.
Yeah.
I imagine there are people who set a day for a particular hike months in advance.
Yeah.
Well, unless you've included the mountain in that planning process, it's good to have some flexibility. Early on in my hiking career, probably luck played a certain role.
Because there probably was way less education about weather and awareness back then.
Yeah, certainly there was some, because when I started hiking, there already had been, sad to say, dozens of fatalities on Mount Washington, often weather-related.
Yep.
So it's the kind of thing that we did try to keep in mind. I do recall one early high school trip, staying overnight at the Hermit Lake shelters, hiking up the head wall in the rain, because, of course, we wanted to get to Mount Washington. But fortunately, when we got up to the top of the head wall, we realized that this was sort of a fool's errand and that it was rather unpleasant.
Yeah.
And so we hiked back down.
That was in high school?
That was in high school.
Wow.
So it was good. We had the sense to turn around in that instance.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
I'm curious, especially because you hold all of this history, right? Your perspective is so much broader than a lot of people here. They have a short little window of understanding of of Mount Washington, and where you're a historian and you have all of this, even these personal artifacts and these like personal stories from all these people from the past. You hold a much greater understanding of this mountain and of what has happened and what continues to happen over and over again. And you do a weekly email called Museum Musings, and you shared a familiar story this morning. It was the story about
Curtis and Ormsby.
Curtis and Ormsby from June 30th, 1900.
That's right. It was on this very day that Father Bill Curtis, as he was called, because he had such a role in the New York athletic community, and Alan Ormsby, they started up Mount Washington. They were going to an AMC meeting that was going to be held, that was being held, at the Summit House Hotel. And for those who don't know, that once upon a time, actually over the span of many decades, there was a kind of big, somewhat fancy hotel on top of Mount Washington. And so the AMC was having its meeting there. Most of the people probably went up on a stage or on the Cog Railroad. But Bill Curtis and Alan Ormsby figured they would hike up, and they hiked up the Crawford Path. And the weather was poor. And by the time they got to Mount Monroe, Bill Curtis was evidently cold, wet, weak, fell. Hypothermic may have hit his head. And he died there. His friend, Ormsby, continued to the summit, not only trying to get there for shelter for himself, but at this point trying to get some assistance to help his friend, no doubt. And he couldn't make it to the summit either. He made it to within a few hundred feet of the summit and collapsed. They were expected at the summit, the weather was too harsh that afternoon, that evening, to go out to look for them. But the next day, search parties went out and found their 2 bodies. A terribly sad situation. And the way that sometimes those events affect history is that the AMC considered, well, if these 2 strong hikers, who nowadays might be more akin to trail runners,
right,
could succumb to the elements on the exposed area south of Mount Washington, maybe the AMC as a public service should put up some sort of shelter so that if anyone else found themselves in similar straits, they could find some shelter and get out of the weather. And so the next year, 1901, the AMC built what they called the Crawford Path Refuge. And it was on what was then the Crawford Path. And that was marked as not for pleasure camping, for emergency use only. But you can guess what happened, because people liked being up there. In harsh weather, yes, they had to use it for an emergency. In pleasant weather, it gave them a chance to camp with some shelter above tree line. And the area around the Crawford Path Refuge started to get trampled. People would pull up scrub growth to try to have a campfire, that sort of thing. And so the AMC, responding both to the environmental damage and to the recognition that people really like spending time up here, they built the Lakes of the Clouds Hut in 1915. And that grew over the span of many years because it was the most popular of the AMC huts. Now it can hold 90 overnight guests during the usual...
It can?
Yeah. They really pack them in there.
They must.
Yes. And it's open typically from early to mid-June to mid-September. And occasionally people will pass by in early November on a rare, nice day. I recall once hiking by there. It was a beautiful early November day, sunny, comparatively warm. And someone passing by the closed hut said, "Gosh, why did they close it so early?" Well, if he had been there 2 weeks earlier, he probably would have had a foot of snow on the ground.
Right.
So the weather certainly can have a huge impact on that sort of thing.
It does. I'm curious, because this story is just one of many that just, it keeps happening.
Yes.
It keeps happening.
Yes.
People that are strong, that are, even people that are well prepared, that have done this before. You know, it's not just people that show up for a day hike in flip-flops. It's like actual athletes that live in the area that have died.
Yes.
And we keep hearing these stories and saying, how did this happen? And it keeps happening. So what's your answer to this?
Well, I think it's an effort that can never end, which is education, which is just trying to make people aware of the hazards there. There was a case, for instance, of the Pamajawasset a few years ago, where a fit, experienced person headed out to do a very hard hike. If he had done that on a more pleasant winter's day, probably would have accomplished it. But the elements did not cooperate. The snowpack was deep in places. The weather was cold and windy. And I think we really have to be humble, and we have to be aware. We have certain limitations. The weather has certain power.
Yeah.
And we have to be sure that whatever we bring to the trail is consistent with the challenge. And I think it's great when people try hard, when they do try to challenge themselves. Sometimes Mount Washington is the highest mountain they'll ever visit. Sometimes they're training to go to Mount McKinley or to Everest. And so they do try to match themselves against some pretty harsh conditions. But to do so, again, with humility and also with awareness, to realize that there are some conditions that, you know, the mountain is not going to let you succeed.
Yeah.
And I think it's excellent when people try to push themselves, but they just have to know where the limit is. To be in good physical condition, to have good experience in the area, to have good navigation skills, to be properly clothed and equipped. I do a fair amount of hiking by myself, but there are times when a companion is a very good thing. And if you do that, you can have a lot of what some people will call type 2 fun, where they say type 1 fun is where it's fun to remember it. Type 2 fun, it can be kind of miserable, but it gives you good memories about the experience and about your ability to test yourself. And then there's type 3 fun, which is just miserable from the outset. Best to be avoided.
What's the tallest mountain you've ever been on?
Let's say I've been to Mount Whitney in California.
Okay.
It's about 14,500 feet.
Did you climb that one?
Yes. Yeah. It's a hike.
Yeah.
I guess I'd say when I was in high school and college, I did a little bit of climbing, rope climbing.
Did you?
Yeah. But nothing serious, mostly top roping.
Okay.
And as I get older, I'm a little more sensitive to heights and to drop-offs. So I probably won't be doing too much of that. Although with a rope on, I feel much better than if I'm at a place where a stumble could have serious consequences.
Yeah.
But with Mount Whitney, it's climbed by thousands of people or hiked up by thousands of people every year.
Did you notice any altitude effects when you were there?
I'd say yes. The times I've gone hiking at higher altitudes, I really try to spend a few days acclimatizing, and I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I think everyone's going to be different in how they react to altitude, but I think spending a couple of days working your way up rather than trying to jump right in is a good idea. On Mount Whitney, I would say it was slow, but no adverse effects, no headaches or illness or anything like that.
You're lucky then.
Oh, have you had similar experiences?
I've experienced high altitude.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had altitude sickness, but
Yes.
that feeling of just taking one step being so difficult is something that you don't forget.
Wow. What elevation was that at?
Let me think. This was in Ecuador.
Oh.
It was probably, I don't know, probably 15,000 because I lived in Quito. So I lived at 10,000 feet. And then I went with this group to go climb this volcano nearby, and we didn't know what we were doing. We came with we were the typical tourist group. It didn't go very far.
Well, I'm glad you escaped unscathed.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even at the comparatively modest altitudes in California, where the highest peaks are 14-something, well, Whitney would be the highest, around 14.5. Occasionally there are people who come to grief if they go too quickly from low altitude to high altitude.
Yep. That's what I've heard.
And actually, even on Mount Washington, sometimes you're giving me that look.
What?
What are you talking about? Folks who are compromised to start with.
Okay.
So maybe they have some cardiovascular issues or pulmonary issues. And if they have a worst case scenario, let's say they go from the valley to the summit, not hiking, but via train or vehicle. And maybe they exert themselves at the summit. For instance, if you drive up, for most folks, the last little bit is climbing up a staircase that has about 71 steps.
Yeah.
They might be a little nervous in a different environment. So when you put that whole package together, sometimes they have medical crises. But for most folks, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Just as some people sometimes look upon hiking as being very dangerous.
Yeah.
But if that's, I think, because you will see headlines now and then saying, hiker dies on Mount Washington. You never see a headline that say, that says, 1,000 people hiked up Mount Washington this weekend with no incident.
They should do that, though.
Yes.
That would be really wonderful.
And the little headline would say, they had fun and plan to go back again.
I like that idea. Will you start that trend?
Well, I'll do what I can.
Okay.
I'll do what I can.
I think that would bring more balance to our region.
Yes, yes.
It's good to have balance.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
So, how frequently do you get to the top of Mount Washington these days?
I don't get to the top very often these days.
What?
No. I actually, my next scheduled trip is in, I guess it's about 3 weeks now.
Okay.
The observatory has a Seek the Peak fundraiser.
That's right.
Part of that involves welcoming the hike participants in for a summit weather station tour, if they chose Mount Washington to hike for their event. And I've been doing that for several years. Often we've had an open house in October, which is the anniversary of the observatory's founding back in 1932. But I have spent a lot of time there over the years.
Yeah.
I worked there for 3 years as a weather observer. So that was 8 days on, 6 days off.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You do spend a lot of time in the fog.
Yeah. Not seeing anything.
Seeing the clouds.
Yeah.
Up close and personal. I remember actually Joel White, with whom we've spoken, a colleague of mine from the observatory, and he was once my boss when I worked for the AMC. He remarked that it's like having two different lives. You're 6 days off, you're off. You're 8 days on the mountain, that's all you're doing. Mm-hmm. And the typical routine involves serving as a weather observer. When I was an observer, we took weather observations every 3 hours. Nowadays, they're done every hour.
Oh.
That information goes into our weather records, also goes to the National Weather Service to add to the climatological record and to feed into their computer models for developing forecasts. There are also lots of routine maintenance responsibilities and so forth having to do with maintaining the weather station in a remote place, the top of Mount Washington. When I was up on the mountain, my job also included overseeing our seasonal museum. So I was busy running back and forth between the weather room and the museum on busy summer days, which is fine. Keeps you out of trouble.
Yeah.
After working at the summit for 3 years, I worked occasionally while wrapping up my schoolwork, and then eventually became the person in charge of the observatory's educational programs, like our school programs, the visitor trips to the top of the mountain, tours, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then segued to being the curator of the collection.
When you think about your life and you think about that high school kid who came up and camped out in Tuckerman's Ravine.
Yes.
And now, all of the influence that you've had and the impact you've had and how this mountain has really become your life's work. Mm-hmm. What do you feel?
Well, it's hard to say. You're too young to do this, but occasionally you think, well, what do I want my obituary to include?
Yeah. And I'm not too young to do that, by the way.
Okay.
I have thought about it.
And when I think about that, a lot of people who I know think of me as a hiker, but that, I think, is pretty small potatoes compared to service. And in terms of what I would want to appear in my obituary, it would be more as an example to others.
Yeah.
So I did serve for 20 years on Androscoggin Valley Search and Rescue, helping people in need as part of that very important team.
Yeah.
Let's see, also, I was on the board of the New Hampshire Outdoor Council for about 20 years.
Okay.
And still serve as a volunteer. And the Outdoor Council helps channel donations to search and rescue teams and for backcountry safety education. I've been a trail maintainer on Mount Washington for, I guess, about 35 years now. I figure that when you enjoy the trails, enjoy the mountains, that if you have the ability and have the time, you should chip in.
Mm-hmm.
And also locally, I serve on one of my neighborhood boards. And I can't say that sort of quasi-political service is the kind I enjoy the most, but even if I disagree with their perspectives, I appreciate the fact that people are willing to step up to the plate and serve in small town boards, because that's really needed. Some might say that's the core of our democracy. People are often quick to criticize a local board, but when it comes time to actually doing the work, they might not always be so active. So I think that's important. So I think just sort of paying my dues, which is something I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So service is really important to you.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting how we start out our lives and we don't really know what direction it's going to take. And then when you're at you're able to look back and see how things have played out, that you find those themes in your life and you say, oh, yes, this makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious what themes you see. Like, why does this make sense that you're at Mount Washington?
Well, I suppose back in 1969, I never would have thought that I would work at a place like Lakes of the Clouds or be associated with the observatory, that I would work alongside some of those snow rangers that I just became acquainted with on my first visit there, that I'd become, I guess, what we might call part of the mountain community, which I certainly appreciate. There are those who say all things happen for a reason, so...
Do you believe that?
I don't know. It'd be nice if they did.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yes. As long as it's a good reason.
I think it doesn't hurt to believe that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not hurting anybody.
No. And it might inspire us to go on and do even better.
That's right. So we have a couple minutes left. What haven't you talked about today that you would love to share with our listeners?
Well, let's see.
What do you do for fun? I know you said you hike and ski, but anything else that you do?
I do a little bit of cycling.
Okay.
And here we are in Littleton.
Yeah.
Not far away from the Cross New Hampshire Adventure Trail.
Did you bring your bike?
I did not bring my bike.
We have some you can rent.
Well, I have to scoot back. I have things I have to do in North Conway.
Okay.
But I have biked the whole Cross New Hampshire Adventure Trail.
Do you have a patch?
I was given a patch by Marian Borowski.
Where is it?
Who is the queen.
She is the queen.
Of the Cross New Hampshire Adventure Trail. My patch is at home. I haven't put it on anything yet.
Oh.
But I've done it in sections. I haven't done the whole thing. But it's a wonderful resource here in the North Country.
Yeah.
And I know Marianne keeps working to make it even better. It's an awesome trip. And even when whatever you're riding on might be a little bit rough, just remember, it's an adventure.
It's not perfect.
No. Where I parked this morning, I saw a couple of folks who looked like they were bike packing.
Nice.
So I didn't notice if they were headed north or headed south, but which I guess is more like east and west.
That's
as far
right.
as the trail goes.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're going to have a great trip. I hope they get an early start in the morning. It's going to be hot.
It's going to be very hot this whole week.
And we're looking at the possibility of maybe a new daily record high temperature on Mount Washington. Maybe, just maybe, could have an all-time record high. The all-time record high for the mountain is 72 degrees. I've seen that on 2 occasions since 1932. Will it get hotter? Maybe. Maybe.
72, that's it?
Yeah.
I guess I need to be up on the mountain this week.
It'll be a cool place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first time it was 72, I think it was back in 1975, maybe. Hot Saturday.
Yeah.
So-called. Many places in New England had temperatures of 100 or more. Got up to 72 on Mount Washington. So we'll see what happens over the next few days.
We do like breaking records here.
Yes, for sure.
That's something I notice a lot of people are very proud of Mount Washington.
Yes.
Even though it's not like, doesn't belong to any of us,
yes.
There's just like this pride that's attached to it,
yes.
you know?
And at the observatory, I'd say we have a certain amount of pride with respect to the world record wind that occurred back in 1932, 230 miles an hour, even though we had nothing to do with
That's
it.
Right.
And sad to say, it has been eclipsed since then by a typhoon off the coast of Australia. But when you look back to 1934, the world record wind, it serves as inspiration to us today. It's a reminder that the weather up there can be really harsh.
Yeah.
But even with the relatively primitive conditions and by today's standards, primitive technology, the observers then were very much on the ball and were able to get an accurate reading of that remarkably high wind. So given what they did more than 90 years ago, can we do anything less? We just have to use their example and do even more.
Yes, it definitely sets the bar high.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Peter, I'm so glad that you've been able to be here with us today.
Well, thank you, Amanda. It's been a privilege and a pleasure. And if you get out on your bicycle, do it before it gets too hot today.
Oh, yeah. I think it's already too late.
Uh-huh.
For our listeners, you've been listening to North of Normal on WZNC LP Bethlehem, North Country Community Radio, 99.9 FM, and streaming online at nococommunityradio.org. To our regular listeners, thank you for continuing to show up. And if this was your first episode, I hope you got a feel for what this show is about. Thank you for spending this hour with us. Thank you for supporting local radio. And thank you to Dr. Peter Crane for sharing part of his story with us today. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can reach me at amanda@clearviewadvantage.com. And if you missed part of today's episode or you want to explore past episodes, you can find them at clearviewadvantage.com/podcast. I'm Amanda McKeen. I'll see you back here next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Until then, stay grounded, stay curious, and stay a little north of normal. Peter, thank you again.
Thank you, Amanda.